Hello everyone, I have another interesting endgame study here. You see that white has two pawns while black has a knight and a pawn, and it is white to move and draw the game. White is playing for a draw while black is playing for a win. Now the problem with white is that these two pawns, this pawn and this pawn, these are not connected. That is the problem. If these two pawns were connected, then white could win. I mean, he can try or push for a win, but since these two pawns are not helping each other, white cannot play for a win. The problem with black is not this knight. The problem is this king. This king is cornered, and this if this king was in the center, then black could easily win the game. But since this king is in the corner, this king has a lot of mobility. This king can quickly go to the center and try to stop this pawn or like chase this knight and promote, right? So it's black to move and draw the game. So what's the first move is very important. If you get the first move wrong, you will lose the game. So let's say if white tries to deflect the knight through a7, right, tries to deflect the knight, then uh, white is lost because knight into a7, king c3, king g2, king d4, knight c6 check, king e4, like trying to stop this pawn, knight e7, c4, f6. This is very important, not f5, because by playing f6 you're restricting, you're creating a wall, this square, so you're not allowing the white king to penetrate. Now king f4, now this king goes to the defense of this pawn, and this knight is already covering c8, so white can never queen, and knight is covering this square, the pawn is covering this square, so there is a wall here. You see the wall, this is a wall. So this f6 move was very important to stop the white king from penetrating. Now this king goes to the defense of this pawn, c5, king h4, c6, king h5, c7, king g6, and white is lost. There is no way white can win. Now what white can do is go this way, but the knight will simply blockade or capture this pawn, and this pawn will queen. King g4, f5, king g3, king g5, and it's a win. So a7 is not the right move. If you play a7, you lose. What happens with c4? If you play c4, then f5, right? And white cannot promote this, and white cannot push this, and white king cannot stop this because if white king tries to come here, this king will come here and then ultimately win. So c4 is the wrong move. The right move is king c3. The right move is king c3, and then f5. Here, if black is not careful, black will also lose the game. So if instead of f5 he goes king g2, then king c4, f5, king c5, knight a7, king b6, f4, king into a7, f3, king b6, f2, a7, f1, a8, and this comes with check, king g1, and then queen e4, and white should win with an extra pawn. It's an easy win. So after king c3, king g2 is wrong. F5 is the right move. Now it's very important. White has to let go of this pawn to deflect the knight. Now is the time to deflect the knight. If you play king c4, then you lose because f4, king d5, f3, king into c6, f2, a7, f1 queen, a8 queen, a8 queen, and then queen f3 check, and white is lost. Uh, so a7 is the right move here. If instead of a7 you play king d3, then king g2, king e3, and then king g3, and then white is lost because this pawn cannot be stopped, right? So after f5, a7 is the move to deflect the knight. So the knight is deflected. Now the king can come to the center to the king comes to the center to push its own pawn and also stop this. So king d4. If you go king d3, so after knight into a7, if you go king d3, then you lose because king g2, king e3, and king g3. So it's very important. King d4 is the move, so that you prevent this king from coming very close to this pawn. So knight c6 check, king e3. This stopping this pawn is also important. So after knight c6, if you go king d5 trying to chase the knight, black doesn't care. He will just play king g2, c4, f4, king c6, f3, c5, f2, and black wins. So black will just let go of the knight. So after nc6, king d5 is wrong. You have to play king e3 to stop this pawn. Now king g2, king f4. Now the only thing white needs is to capture this pawn. If white is able to capture this pawn, it's a draw. Black cannot mate with a single knight. So before pushing your own pawn, you have to stop this pawn and try to capture it. So knight e7. If you go knight d4, then c3. Okay, so knight e7. Then now you push your pawn c4. Now what is black's problem? Black's problem is that this knight is stuck defending this, right? And this knight is also, controlling the queening square. So black has to bring the king to the defense of this pawn and then free the knight. So black goes king h3. If you go king f2, then c5, king e2, c6, and he will force you to capture, and then he will capture the pawn, and it's a draw. So black has to go king h3, come to like g6, and then free the knight. King g5, not allowing the king to come, to the defense of this pawn. If you, instead of king g5 after king h3, if you go c5, then king h4, c6, king h5, c7, and king g6, and then black has successfully defended this pawn and also freed his knight. Okay, now whatever white moves, black will use the king and the pawn to push this pawn, and white is lost. So after king h3, king g5, it's very important to prevent the king from coming over. So you can also go king e5, but it's not right, because king g4, king d6, and knight g6. So it's not clear. I mean, white cannot win this. So after king g5, white cannot allow the king to come. King g3, trying to push this. Now king f6, right? King f4. If you push f4, then king e7, f3, c5, f2, c6, f1, c7, queen f5, king d8, and this is a theoretical draw. Black cannot win. If the pawn is on the 7th rank, and if it's not a rook pawn or a knight pawn, if it's a bishop pawn or a center pawn, it's a draw. It doesn't matter how many checks you get, you cannot win this. So it's a draw. So after king f6, black has to go king f4. You cannot play f4, then white is able to draw. So king f4, king e7, king e5. So black is also trying to stop this pawn. If the king reaches c5 or even d5, then black can still hope for a win. Now you have to go king d7. If you go c5, then king d5, and white is lost. So king d7, and then king d4, and then after king d7, if you go f4, then c5, f3, c6, f2, c7, f1, c8. It's a draw, right? So after king d7, you have to go king d4, and now king d6, threatening to threatening to push and forcing you to capture. So king into c4 and king e5, and this is a draw. So you see, both players. So let's go to the starting position. uh, it looks as if white is lost, but if black is not careful, black can even lose this game, because just because you have a piece does not mean it's a guaranteed win, and just because you're a piece down doesn't mean it's a guaranteed loss. Every single move is critical. The first move itself is very critical, king c3. The other moves like a7 or c4 loses. So after king c3, f5, king g2 loses. Then again a7, any other move loses. After f5, if you play king c4, you're lost. If you play king d3, you're lost. Right, so every single move in the end game is very, very crucial in order to secure a win or a draw. So after a7, knight into a7, and then king d4, centralizing the king, and clearing the way for your pawn and also stopping this pawn. Knight c6, king e3, king g2, king f4, not allowing this king. Knight e7, c4, king h3. This is very important. King f2 and you're lost. c5. I mean, it's a draw. And then king g5, and then king g3. If you play f4, then king e7 and f3, c5, f2, c6, f1, c7, queen f5, king d8. It's a draw. So after king g5, king g3, king f6. Now you have to play king f4, king e7, king e5, king d7, king d4. Again, it's very important not to hurry. After king e5, if you play c5, then king d5. So after king d7, king d4, and then king d6. So after king d7, if black tries pushing f4, then c5, and it's a draw. f3, c6, f2, c7, f1, c8, and then so king d7, king d4, king d6, king into c4, and king into e5. I hope you like this study.